how's it going? This is going to be a very different type of stream than the normal content. Excuse me. The normal content I put out. I'm going to be doing some relaxing reading right now. Hopefully people will enjoy it. So here's how it's going to work. I am going to be reading from a list of poems. Today I'm reading poetry by Emily Dickinson. How it's gonna work is I am going to start by reading out the title of the poem, then I will be reciting it, and then I will say next, and I will be moving on to the next one on the list, and I will continue to do that until the stream is over. I may also pause every so often to drink water. But yeah, that's how this is gonna go. It's going to be very relaxed. It's going to be a very chill time. As you can see from the text up top, sound alerts are currently disabled because I want this to be nice and relaxing for people. And I don't want my usual, chaotic sound alerts to ruin the mood of things. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. Poetry by Emily Dickinson. A little road not made of man. A little road not made of man, enabled of the eye, accessible to till of bee or cart of butterfly. If town it have beyond itself, 'tis that I cannot say. I only sigh, no vehicle bears me along the way. Next, a wounded deer leaps highest. A wounded deer leaps highest, I've heard the hunter tell. 'Tis but the ecstasy of death, and then the break is still. The smitten rock that gushes, the trampled steel that springs, a cheek is always redder, just where the hectic stings. Mirth is the mail of anguish, in which it causes harm. Lest anybody spy the blood, and your hurt exclaim. Hi, Mari. Next. Alter when the hills do. Alter when the hills do, falter when the sun. Question if his glory be the perfect one. Survey when the daffodil doth the dew, even as herself, O friend, I will of you. Next. Keep in mind, some of these are quite short, but there's also a very extensive list of them. Next, Angels in the Early Morning. Angels in the early morning may be seen the dews among, stooping, plucking, smiling, flying. Do the buds to them belong? Angels when the sun is hottest may be seen the sands among, stooping, plucking, sighing, flying. Parched flowers they bear along. Next, as children bid the guest good night. As children bid the guest good night, and then reluctant turn, my flowers raise their pretty lips, then put their nightgowns on. As children caper when they wake, merry that it is morn, my flowers from 100 cribs will peep and prance again. Next, Belshazzar had a letter. Belshazzar had a letter. He never had but one. Belshazzar's correspondent concluded and begun. In that immortal copy, the conscious of us all can read without its glasses on Revelation's wall. Next, delight becomes pictorial. Delight becomes pictorial when viewed through pain, more fair because impossible that any gain. The mountain at a given distance in amber lies. Approach, the amber flits a little, and that's the skies. Next, glee, the great storm is over. Glee, the great storm is over. 4 have recovered the land. 40 gone down together into the boiling sand. Ring for the scant salvation, toll for the bonny souls. Neighbor and friend and bridegroom spinning upon the shoals. How will they tell the shipwreck when winter shakes the door? Till the children ask, but the 40? Did they come back no more? Then a silence suffuses? Then a silence suffuses the story, and a softness the teller's eye, and the children no further question, and only the waves reply. You seem like a very chill dude. Sometimes. This is very different from what I normally do. Okay, next, have you got a brook in your little heart? Have you got a brook in your little heart where bashful flowers blow, and blushing birds go down to drink, and shadows tremble so? And nobody knows, so still it flows, that any brook is there. And yet your little draught of life is daily drunken there. Then look out for the little brook in March, when the rivers overflow, and the snows come hurrying from the hills, and the bridges often go. And later, in August it may be, when the meadows parching lie, beware lest this little brook of life some burning noon go dry. Saw me in the collab and thought I was cool. Thank you very much. I'm not really cool, I'm just a nerd. Next, I asked no other thing. I asked no other thing, no other was denied. I offered being for it, the mighty merchant smiled. Brazil, he twirled a button, without a glance my way. But madam, is there nothing else that we can show today? Next, I had no time to hate because. I had no time to hate because the grave would hinder me, and life was not so ample. Life was not so ample I could finish enmity. Nor had I time to love, but since some industry must be, the little toil of love I thought was large enough for me. Next, I have no life but this. I have no life but this to lead it here, nor any death but less dispelled from there, nor tie to earths to come, nor action anew, except through this extent the realm of you. Next, I know a place where summer strives. I know a place where summer strives with such a practiced frost. She each year leads her daisies back, recording briefly lost. But when the south wind stirs the pools and struggles in the lanes, her heart misgives her for her vow, and she pours soft refrains. Into the lap of adamant and spices and the dew that stiffens quietly to quartz upon her amber shoe. Next, I taste a liquor never brewed. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the vats upon the Rhine yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air I am, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more, till seraphs swing their snowy hats, and saints to windows run, to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. Next, if I can stop one heart from breaking. Hi, Serene, how are you doing? Perfect stream. Let's see, where was I? If I can stop one heart from breaking. There we go. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. Nice to see you again, too. Sorry, I wasn't around for the Discord day you were having. I did see it there, but I was a little shy around all the different people. Let's see, where's next? Yes, Emily Dickinson is a very classic poet. Let's see. Next one, if I should die. If I should die, and you should live, and time should gurgle on, and morn should beam, and noon should burn, as it has usual done. If birds should build as early, and bees as bustling go, one might depart at option from enterprise below. 'Tis sweet to know that stocks will stand, when we with daisies lie, that commerce will continue, and trades as briskly fly. It makes the parting tranquil, and keeps the soul serene, that gentlemen so sprightly conduct the pleasing scene. Just gonna take a sip of water. Okay. Dickinson with Haley Steinfeld playing as Emily. I'll have to write that down so I don't forget it. Next one up. Let's see. If you were coming in the fall. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by, with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls, and put them each in separate drawers. Sorry. And put them each in separate drawers until their time befalls. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's land. Sorry, I should. There's a few of the. There's some of these I didn't look at beforehand, and I am definitely stuttering on the pronunciation. If certain when this life was out that yours and mine should be, I'd toss it yonder like a rind and taste eternity. But now, all ignorant of the length of its time uncertain wing, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. I see Mancer's here too. Hi. Do you like me reading down this list of poetry? Let's see. Next one is Heaven a Physician. Is heaven a physician? They say that he can heal, but medicine posthumous is unavailable. Is heaven an exchequer? They speak of what we owe, but that negotiation I am not a party to. Next, much madness is divinest sense. Much madness is divinest sense to a discerning eye. Much sense the starkest madness, 'tis the majority. In this as all prevails, assent and you are sane. Demure, you're straightway dangerous and handled with a chain. Next, new feet within my garden go. New feet within my garden go, new fingers stir the sod. A troubadour upon the elm betrays the solitude. New children play upon the green, new weary sleep below, and still the pensive spring returns, and still the punctual snow. Next, on this long storm the winter rose. On this long storm the rainbow rose, on this late morn the sun, the clouds, the listless elephants, horizons strangled down. The birds rose smiling in their nests, the gales indeed were done. Alas, how heedless were the eyes on whom the summer shone. The quiet nonchalance of death no daybreak can bestir. The slow archangel's syllables must awaken her. Next, one dignity delays for all. One dignity delays for all, one mitred afternoon. None can avoid this purple, none can evade this crown. Coach it ensures, and footmen, chamber and state and throng. Bells also in the village as we ride grand along. What dignified attendance, but service when we pause. How loyally at parting their 100 hats they raise. How pomp surpassing ermine, when simple you and I present our meek escutcheon, and claim the rank to die. Next, our share of night to bear. Our share of night to bear, our share of morning, our blank in bliss to fill, our blank in scorning. Here a star, and there a star, some lose their way. Here a mist, and there a mist, afterwards day. I was thinking of doing a stream like this, but with old fairy tales. Yeah, I could see that doing well. Originally, my idea was about reading different short stories, kind of like that. And I would still like to do that. It's just that this was something I was able to get together a lot easier. And, you know, my little test drive for this idea. Next, perhaps you'd like to buy a flower. Perhaps you'd like to buy a flower, but I could never sell. If you would like to borrow until the daffodil unties her yellow bonnet beneath the village door, until the bees from Clover Rose their hock and sherry draw. Why, I will lend until just then, but not an hour more. Next, resentment is that long shadow on the lawn. Resentment is that long shadow on the lawn, indicative that suns go down. The notice to the startled grass that darkness is about to pass. Next, safe in their alabaster chambers. Safe in their alabaster chambers, untouched by morning and untouched by noon, sleep the meek members of the resurrection, rafter of satin and roof of stone. Light laughs the breeze in her castle of sunshine, babbles the bee in a stolid ear, pipe the sweet birds in ignorant cadence. Ah, what sagacity perished here! Grand go the years in the crescent above them, worlds scoop their arcs and firmaments row, diadems drop and doges surrender, soundless as dots on a disk of snow. Next, so bashful when I spied her. So bashful when I spied her, so pretty, so ashamed, so hidden in her leaflets, lest anybody find. So breathless till I passed her, so helpless when I turned, and bore her, struggling, blushing, her simple haunts beyond. For whom I robbed the dingle, for whom I betrayed the dell, many will doubtless ask me, but I shall never tell. Next, the bee is not afraid of me. The bee is not afraid of me. I know the butterfly. The pretty people in the woods receive me cordially. The brooks laugh louder when I come, the breezes madder play. Wherefore, mine eyes, thy silver mists? Wherefore, O summer's day? Next, the brain within its groove. The brain within its groove runs evenly and true, but let a splinter swerve 'twere easier for you to put the water back when floods have slit the hills and scooped a turnpike for themselves and blotted out the mills. Next, the heart asks pleasure first. The heart asks pleasure first, and then excuse from pain, and then those little anodynes that deaden suffering, and then go to sleep, and then, if it should be, the will of its inquisitor, the liberty to die. Let's see, where am I? Here I am. Next one, the one that could repeat the summer day. The one that could repeat the summer day were greater than itself, though he, minutest of mankind, might be, and who could produce the sun at period of going down. The lingering and the stain, I mean, when Orient has been outgrown, and Occident becomes unknown, his name remain. Next, the pedigree of honey. The pedigree of honey does not concern the bee. A clover any time to him is aristocracy. Next, there's a certain slant of light. There's a certain slant of light on winter afternoons that oppresses like the weight of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us, we can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it anything, 'tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. Next, to fight aloud is very brave. To fight aloud is very brave, but gallanter I know, who charge within the bosom the cavalry of woe, who win and nations do not see, who fail and none observe, whose dying eyes no country regards with patriot love. We trust in plumed procession, for such the angels go, rank after rank, with even feet and uniforms of snow. Next, two swimmers wrestled on the spar. Two swimmers wrestled on the spar until the morning sun, when one turned smiling to the land, O God, the other one. The stray ships passing spied a face upon the waters borne, with eyes in death still begging raised, and hands beseeching thrown. Next, upon the gallows hung a wretch. Upon the gallows hung a wretch, too sullied for the hell, to which the law entitled him as nature's curtain fell. The one who bore him tottered in, for this was woman's son. 'Twas all I had, she stricken gasped. Oh, what a livid boon. Next, whether my bark went down at sea. Whether my bark went down at sea, whether she met with gales, whether to isles enchanted she bent her docile sails. By what mystic mooring she is held today, this is the errand of the eye out upon the bay. Next, who robbed the woods? Who robbed the woods, the trusting woods, the unsuspecting trees, brought out of their burrs and mosses, his fantasy to please? He scanned their trinkets, curious, he grasped, he bore away. What will the solemn hemlock, what will the fir tree say? Next, your riches taught me poverty. Your riches taught me poverty, myself a millionaire, and little wealth as girls could boast, till broad as Buenos Aires. You drifted your dominions a different Peru, and I esteemed all poverty for life's estate with you. Of mines I little know myself, but just the names of gems, the colors of the commonest and scarce of diadems. So much that did I meet the queen, her glory I should know, but this must be a different wealth, to miss it beggars so. I'm sure 'tis India all day to those who look on you, without a stint, without a blame, might I but be the Jew. I'm sure it is a Golconda, beyond my power to deem, to have a smile for mine each day, how better than a gem. At least it solaces to know that there exists a gold, although I prove it just in time, its distance to behold. Its far, far treasure to surmiss, and estimated the pearl that slipped my simple fingers through while just a girl at school. Next, a book. He ate and drank the precious words, his spirit grew robust. He knew no more that he was poor, nor that his frame was dust. He danced along the dingy days, and this bequest of wings was but a book, what liberty a loosened spirit brings. There is no frigate like a book to take us lands away, nor any coursers like a page of prancing poetry. This traverse made the poorest take without a press of toll. How frugal is the chariot that bears a human soul. Next, a charm invests a face. A charm invests a face imperfectly beheld. The Sorry. The lady dare not lift her veil for fear it be dispelled, but peers beyond her mesh and wishes and denies, lest interview annul a want that image satisfies. Next, a clock stopped, not the mantels. Clock stopped, not the mantels, Geneva's farthest skill. Can't put the puppet bowing that's just now dangled still. And awe came on the trinket, the figures hunched with pain, then quivered out of decimals into degreeless noon. It will not stir for doctors, this pendulum of snow. The shopman importunes it, while cool, concernless know. Nods from the gilded pointers, nods from the seconds slim, decades of arrogance between the dial of life and him. Next, a country burial. Ample make this bed with awe. In it wait till judgment break, excellent and fair. Be its mattress straight, be its pillow round, let no sunrise, yellow noise interrupt this ground. Next, a day. I'll tell you how the sun rose, a ribbon at a time. The steepless swam in amethyst, the news like squirrels ran. The tiles the hills. God, I'm making so many mistakes. The hills untied their bonnets, the bobolinks begun. Then I softly said to myself, that must have been the sun. But how he set, I know not. There seemed a purple stile, which little yellow boys and girls were climbing all the while. Till when they reached the other side, a dominie in grey put gently up the evening bars and led the flock away. Next, a death blow is a life blow to some. A death blow is a life blow to some, who till they died did not alive become. Who, had they lived, had died, but when they died, vitality begun. Next, a dew sufficed itself. A dew sufficed itself, and satisfied a leaf, and felt how vast a destiny, how trivial is life. The sun went out to work, the day went out to play, but not again that dew was seen by physiognomy. Whether by day abducted, or emptied by the sun, into the sea in passing, eternally unknown. Next, a light exists in spring. A light exists in spring, not present on the year. At any other period, when March is scarcely here, the color stands abroad on solitary hills that science cannot overtake, but human nature feels. It waits upon the lawn, it shows the furthest tree, upon the furthest slope we know, it almost speaks to me. Then as horizons step, or noons report away, without the formula of sound, it passes and we stay. Quality of loss, affecting our content, as trade had suddenly encroached upon a sacrament. Next, a man. Fate slew him, but he did not drop. She felled, he did not fall. Impaled him on her fiercest stakes, he neutralized them all. She stung him, sapped his firm advanced, but when her worst was done, and he unmoved regarded her, acknowledged him a man. Next, a modest lot of fame petite. A modest lot of fame petite, a brief campaign of sting and sweet. is plenty, is enough. A sailor's business is the shore, a soldier's balls who asketh more, must seek the neighboring life. Next, a murmur in the trees to note. A murmur in the trees to note, not loud enough for wind, a star not far enough to seek, not near enough to find. A long, long yellow on the lawn, a hubbub as of feet, not audible as ours to us, but dapperer, more sweet. A hurrying home of little men to houses unperceived. All this and more, if I should tell, would never be believed. Of robins in the trundle bed, how many I espy, whose night gowns could not hide the wings, although I heard them try. But then I promise ne'er to tell, how could I break my word? So go your way, and I'll go mine, no fear you'll miss the road. Next, a poor torn heart, a tattered heart. A poor torn heart, a tattered heart, that sat it down to rest, nor noticed that the ebbing day flowed silver to the west, nor noticed night did soft ascend, nor constellation burn, intent upon the vision of latitudes unknown. The angels, happening that way, this dusty heart espied, tenderly took it up from toil and carried it to God. There, sandals for the barefoot, there, gathered from the gales, do the blue havens by the hand lead the wandering sails. Next, a portrait. A face devoid of love or grace, a hateful, hard, successful face, a face with which a stone would feel as thoroughly at ease, as were they old acquaintances, first time together thrown. Next, a prayer. I meant to have but modest needs, such as content and heaven. Within my income these could lie, and life I keep even. But since the last included both, it would suffice my prayer, but just for one to stipulate, and grace would grant the pair. And so upon this wise I prayed, Great Spirit, give to me a heaven not so large as yours, but large enough for me. A smile suffused Jehovah's face, the cherubim withdrew, grave saints stole out to look at me, and showed their dimples too. I left the place with all my light, my prayer away I threw. The quiet ages picked it up, and judgment twinkled too. That one so honest be extant, as take the tale for true, that whatsoever you shall ask, itself be given you. But I, grown shrewder, scan the skies with a suspicious air, as children swindled for the first, all swindlers be in fair. Next, a rose. Sepal, petal, and a thorn, upon a common summer's morn. A flash of dew, a bee or two, a bee, a caper in the trees, and I'm a rose. Next, a service of song. Some keep the Sabbath going to church, I keep it staying at home, with a bobolink for a chorister and an orchard for a dome. Some keep the Sabbath in surplice, I just wear my wings. And instead of toiling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. God preaches, a noted clergyman, and the sermon is never long. So instead of getting to heaven at last, I'm going all along. Next, a shady friend for torrid days. A shady friend for torrid days is easier to find than one of higher temperature for frigid hour of mind. The vein little to the east scares muslin souls away, if broadcloth breasts are firmer than those of organdy. Who is to blame? The weaver? Ah, the bewildering thread. The tapestries of paradise so notelessly are made. Take a sip of water. Next, a sickness of this world at most occasions. A sickness of this world at most occasions, when best men die. A wishfulness their far condition to occupy. A chief indifference, as foreign a world must be, themselves forsake contented for deity. Next, a snake. Sweet is the swamp with its secrets, until we meet a snake. 'Tis then we sigh for houses, and our departure take. At that enthralling gallop that only childhood knows, a snake is summer's treason, and guile is where it goes. Next, a syllable. Could mortal lip divine the undeveloped fright of a delivered syllable, 'twould crumble with the weight. Next, a tempest. An awful tempest mashed the air, the clouds were gaunt and few. A black as of a spectre's cloak hid heaven and earth from view. The creatures chuckled on the roofs, and whistled in the air, and shook their fists and gnashed their teeth, and swung their frenzied hair. The morning lit, the birds arose, the monster's faded eyes turned slowly to his native coast, and peace was paradise. Next, a thought went up my mind today. A thought went up my mind today that I have had before, but did not finish some way back. I could not fix the year, nor where it went, nor why it came the second time to me, nor definitely what it was have I the art to say. But somewhere in my soul I know I've met the thing before. It just reminded me 'twas all, and came my way no more. Next, a throw upon the features. A throw upon the features, a hurry in the breath, an ecstasy of parting denominated death, an anguish at the mention which, when to patience grown, I have known permission given to rejoin its own. Next, a thunderstorm. The wind begun to rock the grass with threatening tunes and low. He flung a menace at the earth, a menace at the sky. The leaves unhooked themselves from trees and started all abroad. The dust did scoop itself like hands and throw away the road. The wagons quickened on the streets, the thunder hurried slow. The lightning shoved a yellow beak and then a livid claw. The birds put up the bars to nests, the cattle fled to barns. There came one drop of giant rain, and then, as if the hands that held the dams had parted hold, the waters wrecked the sky, but overlooked my father's house, just quartering a tree. Next, a toad can die of light. A toad can die of light. Death is the common right of toads and men, of earl and midge, the privilege. Why swagger then? The gnat's supremacy is large as thine. Next, a train went through a burial gate. A train went through a burial gate. A bird broke forth and sang, and thrilled and quivered and shook his throat till all the churchyard rang, and then adjusted his little notes and bowed and sang again. Doubtless he thought it meet of him to say good-bye to men. Next, a well. What mystery pervades a well, the water lives so far, like neighbor from another world residing in a jar. The grass does not appear afraid. I often wonder he can stand so close and look so bold at what is dread to me. Related somehow they may be, the sedge stands by the sea, where he is floorless, yet of fear no evidence gives he. But nature is a stranger yet, the ones that sight her most have never passed her haunted house, nor simplified her ghost. To pity those that know her not is helped by the regret that those who know her less, the nearer her they get. Next, a word. A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. Next, adrift, a little boat adrift. Adrift, a little boat adrift, and night is coming down. Will no one guide a little boat unto the nearest town? So sailors say on yesterday, just as the dusk was brown, when little boat gave up its strife and gurgled down and down. But angels say on yesterday, just as dawn was red, one little boat, a serpent with gales, retrimmed its mast, redecked its sails, exultant onward sped. Next, afraid of who I am afraid. Afraid? Of whom am I afraid? Not death, for who is he? The porter of my father's lodge as much abasheth me. Of life, 'twere odd I fear a thing that comprehendeth me in one or more existences at deity's decree. Of resurrection, is the East afraid to trust and mourn, with her fastidious forehead as soon impeach my crown. Next, aftermath. The murmuring of bees has ceased, but murmuring of some posterior prophetic as simultaneous come. The lower meters of the year, when nature's laugh is done, the revelations of the book whose genesis is June. Next, almost. Within my reach, I could have touched, I might have chanced that way, soft sauntered through the village, sauntered as soft away. So unsuspected violets within the fields lie low, too late for striving fingers that passed an hour ago. Next, along the Potomac. When I was small, a woman died. Today, her only boy went up from the Potomac, his face all victory. To look at her, how slowly the seasons must have turned, till bullets clipped an angle, and he passed quickly round. If pride shall be in paradise, I never can decide. Of our imperial conduct no person testified. But proud in apparition, that woman and her boy pass back and forth before my brain, as ever in the sky. Next, Alpine Glow. Our lives are Swiss, so still, so cool, till some odd afternoon the Alps neglect their curtains and we look farther on. Italy stands the other side, while like a guard between, the solemn Alps, the siren Alps, forever intervene. Next, Apocalypse. I'm wife, I've finished that other state. I'm czar, I'm woman now, it's safer so. How odd the girl's life looks behind this soft eclipse. To think that earth seems so to those in heaven now. This being comfort then, that other kind was pain. But why compare? I'm wife, stop there. Next, apotheosis. Come slowly, Eden, lips unused to thee. Bashful, sip thy jasmines as the fainting bee. Reaching late his flower, round her chamber hums, counts his nectars, enters, and is lost in balms. Next, April. An altered look about the hills. Tyrian light the village fills. A wider sunrise in the dawn. A deeper twilight on the lawn. A print of a vermilion foot. Purple finger on the slope. A flippant fly upon the pane. A spider at his trade again. An added strut in chanticleer. A flower expected everywhere. An axe shrill singing in the woods. Burn odors on untraveled roads. All of this and more I cannot tell. A furtive look you know as well. And Nicodemus' mystery receives its annual reply. Next, as by the dead we love to sit. As by the dead we love to sit, become so wondrous dear. As for the lost we grapple, though all the rest are here. In broken mathematics we estimate our prize, vast in its fading ratio to our penurious eyes. Next, as imperceptibly as grief. As imperceptibly as grief, the summer lapsed away, too imperceptible at last to seem perfidy. A quietness distilled as twilight long begun, or nature spending with herself sequestered afternoon. The dusk drew earlier in, the morning foreign shone, a courteous yet harrowing grace as guest who would be gone. And thus without a wing or service of a keel, our summer made her light escape into the beautiful. Next, asleep. As far from pity as complaint, as cool to speech as stone, as numb to revelation as if my trade were bone. As far from time as history, as near yourself today, as children to the rainbow's scarf, our sunset's yellow play. To eyelids in the sepulchre, how still the dancer lies, while colors revelations break and blaze the butterflies. Next, aspiration. We never know how high we are till we are called to rise, and then, if we are true to plan, our statures touch the skies. The heroism we recite would be a daily thing, did not ourselves the cubits warp for fear to be a king. Next, Astra Castra. Departed to the judgment a mighty afternoon, great clouds like ushers leaning, creations looking on. The flesh surrendered, cancelled, the bodiless begun. Two worlds like audiences disperse and leave the soul alone. But I'm not high. This is just writing from the 1800s. It doesn't have to be drugs. It's just called artistic vision. Okay. Next, at 3:30, a single bird. At 3:30, a single bird unto a silent sky, pounded but a single term of cautious melody. At 4:30, experiment and subjugated test, and lo, her silver principle supplanted all the rest. At 7:30, element nor implement was seen, and place was where the presence was, circumference between. Next, at home. The night was wide and furnished scant with but a single star, that often as a cloud it met, blew it out itself for fear. The wind pursued the little bush and drove away the leaves, November left, then clambered up and fretted in the eaves. No squirrel went abroad, a dog's belated feet, like intermittent plush, were heard down the empty street. To feel if blinds be fast, and closer to the fire, her little rocking chair to draw, and shiver for the poor. The housewife's gentle task, how pleasanter, said she, unto the sofa opposite, the sleet then may know thee. Next, at least to pray is left is left. At least to pray is left is left. O Jesus, in the air, I know not which thy chamber is, I'm knocking everywhere. Thou stirrest earthquake in the south, and maelstrom in the sea. Say, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, hast thou no harm for me? Next, at length. Her final summer was it, and yet we guessed it not. If tender industriousness pervaded her, we thought. A further force of life developed from within, when death lit it all the shortness up and made the hurry plain. We wondered at our blindness when nothing was to see but her Carrera guidepost at our stupidity. When, duller than our dullness, the busy darling lay, so busy was she finishing, so leisurely were we. Next, Aurora. Of bronze and blaze, the north to-night, so adequate its forms, so preconcerted with itself, so distant to alarms, an unconcern so sovereign to universe or me, it paints my simple spirit with tints of majesty, till I take vaster altitudes, and strut upon my stem, disdaining men and oxygen for arrogance of them. My splendors are menagerie, but their completeness slow, will entertain the centuries when I am, long ago, an island in dishonored grass, whom none but daisies know. Next, autumn. The morns are meeker than they were, the nuts are getting brown, the berry's cheek is plumper, the rose is out of town. The maple wears a gayer scarf, the field a scarlet gown. Lest I should be old-fashioned, I'll put a trinket on. Next, beclouded. The sky is low, the clouds are mean, a traveling flake of snow. Across a barn or through a rut, debates if it will go. A narrow wind complains all day how someone treated him. Nature, like us, is sometimes caught without her diadem. Next, before the ice is in the pools. Before the ice is in the pools, before the skaters go, or any cheek at nightfall is tarnished by the snow, before the fields have finished, before the Christmas tree, wonder upon wonder will arrive to me. What we touch the hems of on a summer's day, what is only walking just a bridge away, that which sings so, speaks so, when there's no one here, will the frock I wept in answer me to wear? Next, bequest. You left me, sweet, two legacies, a legacy of love, a heavenly Father would content had he the offer of. You left me boundaries of pain, capacious as the sea, between eternity and time, your consciousness and me. Shmoji. Let's see. Next one. Bless God, he went as soldiers. Bless God, he went as soldiers, his musket on his breast. Grant God, he charged the bravest of all the martial blessed. Please God, might I behold him, an epauletted wight. I should not fear the foe then, I should not fear the fight. Next, by the sea. I started early, took my dog, and visited the sea. The mermaids in the basement came out to look at me, and frigates in the upper floor extended hempen hands, presuming me to be a mouse aground upon the sands. But no man moved me till the tide went past my simple shoe, and past my apron and my belt, and past my bodice too, and made as he would eat me up as wholly as a dew, upon a dandelion sleeve, and then I started too. And he followed close behind. I felt his silver heel upon my ankle, and my shoes would overflow with pearl. Until we met the solid town, no man he seemed to know, and bowing with a mighty look at me, the sea withdrew. Next, called back. Just lost when I was saved, just felt the world go by, just girt me for the onset with eternity when breath blew back, and on the other side I heard recede the disappointed tide. Therefore, as one returned, I feel odd secrets of the line to tell, some sailor skirting foreign shores, some pale reporter from the awful doors before the seal. Next time, to stay. Next time, the things to see, by ears unheard, unscrutinized by eye. Next time, to cherry, while the ages steal, slow tramp the centuries and the cycles wheel. Next, Charlotte Brant's grave. All overgrown by cunning moss, all interspersed with weed, the little cage of currabell in quiet Haworth laid. This bird, observing others when frost too sharp became, retire to other latitudes quietly did the same. But differed in returning, since Yorkshire hills are green, yet not in all the nests I meet can nightingale be seen. Gathered from many wanderings, guessmen can tell through what transporting anguish she reached the asphodel. Soft fall the sounds of Eden upon her puzzled ear. Oh, what an afternoon for heaven when Brant entered here. Next, childish griefs. Softened by time's consummate plush, how sleek the woe appears, that threatened childhood's citadel and undermined the years. Bisected now by bleaker griefs, we envy the despair that devastated childhood's realm, so easy to repair. Next, choice. All the stoles that stand create, I have elected one, when sense from spirit flies away and subterfuge is done. When that which is and that which was apart intrinsic stand, and this brief tragedy of flesh is sifted like a sand. When figures show their royal front and mists are carved away, behold the atom I preferred to all the lists of clay. Next, cobwebs. The spider as an artist has never been employed, though his surpassing merit is freely certified. By every broom and Bridget throughout a Christian land, neglected son of genius, I take thee by the hand. Next, cocoon. Drab habitation of whom, tabernacle or tomb, or dome of worm, or porch of gnome, or some elf's catacomb. Next, compensation. For each ecstatic instant we must in anguish pay, in keen and quivering ratio to the ecstasy. For each beloved hour sharp pittances of years, bitter contested farthings and coffers heaped with tears. Going to take a sip of water. We've already read through 100 poems so far. And let's continue. It's been a lot of poems, but most of them have been very short. And there are a little over 400 of them in this list. I was not expecting to go through all of them, although at this pace I might actually do it. Yes, I've been making sure to hydrate periodically. Let's continue. Next one, Consecration. Proud of my broken heart, since thou didst break it. Proud of the pain I did not feel till thee. Proud of my night, since thou with moons dost slake it. Not to partake thy passion, my humility. Next, Contrast. A door just opened on a street. I, lost, was passing by. An instant's width of warmth disclosed, and wealth and company. The door is sudden shut, and I, lost, was passing by. Lost doubly, but by contrast most, enlightening misery. Next, Could I but ride indefinite. Could I but ride indefinite, as doth the meadow be, and visit only where I liked, and no man visit me, and flirt all day with buttercups, and marry whom I may, and dwell a little everywhere, or better, run away, with no police to follow or chase me if I do, till I should jump peninsulas to get away from you. As said, but just to be a bee upon a raft of air, and row and nowhere all day long, and anchor off the bar. What liberty, so captives deem, who tight in dungeons are. Next, Dawn. When night is almost done, and sunrise grows so near, that we can touch the spaces, it's time to smooth the hair, and get the dimples ready, and wonder we could care for that old faded midnight that frightened but an hour. Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door, or has its feathers like a bird, or billows like a shore. Next, Day's Parlor. The day came slow till 5 o'clock, then sprang before the hills. Like hindered rubies or the light, a sudden musket spills. The purple could not keep the east, the sun rays shook from fold. Like breadths of topaz packed a night, the lady just unrolled. The happy winds their timbrels took, the birds in docile rows arranged themselves around their prince, the wind is prince of those. The orchard sparkled like a hue, how mighty it was to stay, a guest in this stupendous place, the parlor of the day. Next, Dead. There's something quieter than sleep within this inner room. It wears a sprig upon its breast and will not tell its name. Some touch it and some kiss it, some chaff its idle hand. It has a symbol gravity I do not understand. While simple-hearted neighbors chat of the early dead, we, prone to periphrasis, remark that birds have fled. Next, Death and Life. Apparently with no surprise to any happy flower, the frost beheads it at its play in accidental power. The blonde assassin passes on, the sun proceeds unmoved, to measure off another day for an approving God. Next, death is a dialogue between. Death is a dialogue between the spirit and the dust. Dissolve, says death. The spirit, sir, I have another trust. Death doubts it, it argues from the ground. The spirit turns away, just laying off for evidence an overcoat of clay. Next, death. Death is like the insect menacing the tree, competent to kill it, but decoyed may be. Bait it with the balsam, seek it with the knife, baffle if it cost you everything in life. Then, if it have burrowed out of reach of skill, wring the tree and leave it, 'tis the vermin's will. Next, deed. A deed knocks first at thought, and then it knocks at will. This is the manufacturing spot, and will at home and well. It then goes out in act, or is intoned so still, that only to the ear of God its doom is audible. Next, desire. Who never wanted, maddest joy remains to him unknown. The banquet of abstemiousness surpasses that of wine. Within its hope, though yet ungrasped, desire's perfect goal, no nearer, lest reality should disenthrall thy soul. Next, disenchantment. It dropped so low in my regard, I heard it hit the ground, and go to pieces on the stones at bottom of my mind. Yet I blamed the fate that fractured less than I reviled myself, for entertaining plated wares upon my silver shelf. Next, dreams. Let me not mar that perfect dream by an auroral stain, but so adjust my daily night that it will come again. Next, drowning is not so pitiful. Drowning is not so pitiful as the attempts to rise. 3 times 'tis said a sinking man comes up to face the skies, and then declines forever to an abhorred abode, where hope and he part company, for he is grasped of God. The Maker's cordial visage, however good to see, is shunned, we must admit it, like an adversity. Next, dying. The sun kept setting, setting still, no hue of afternoon. Upon the village I perceived, from house to house 'twas noon. The dusk kept dropping, dropping still, no dew upon the grass, but only on my forehead stopped and wandered in my face. My feet kept drowsing, drowsing still, my fingers were awake, yet why so little sound myself unto my seeming make? How well I knew the light before, I could not see it now. 'Tis dying I am doing, but I'm not afraid to know. Yep, good night, Mancer. That's exactly what this stream is for. Where am I? Right. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness round my form was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of a storm. The eyes beside had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering sure. That last onset when the king be witnessed in his power. I willed my keepsakes signed away, what portion of me I could make assignable, and then there interposed a fly, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me, and then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. Next, each that we lose takes part of us. Each that we lose takes part of us, a crescent still abides, which like the moon some turbid night is summoned by the tides. Next, emancipation. No rack can torture me, my soul's at liberty. Behind this mortal bone there knits a bolder one. You cannot prick with saw, nor rend with scimitar. Two bodies therefore be, bind one, and one will flee. The eagle of his nest no easier divest, and gain the sky than mayest thou, except thyself may be thine enemy. Captivity is consciousness, so's liberty. Next, ending. That is solemn, we have ended, be it but a play, or a glee among the garrets, or a holiday, or a leaving home, or later, parting with the world. We have understood for better, still it be unfurled. Next, enough. God gave a loaf to every bird, but just a crumb to me. I dare not eat it, though I starve, my poignant luxury. To own it, touch it, prove the feat that made the pellet mine, too happy in my sparrow chance for ample coveting. It might be famine all around, I could not miss an ear, such plenty smiles upon my board, my garner shows no fear. I wonder how the rich may feel, an Indiaman, an earl. I deem that I was but a crumb of sovereign of them all. What made me decide to read poetry as of late? I honestly just felt like doing something different. I want to do something different, a little more of a, not so much unconventional idea, but something that I don't see a lot of people do, at least not in the community that I know. I want to try doing new things and try to branch out to a larger audience. Let me drink some water. Alright. Next. Epitaph. Step lightly on this narrow spot. The broadest land that grows is not so ample as the breast these emerald seams enclose. Step lofty, for this name is told as far as cannon dwell, or flag subsist, or fame export her deathless syllable. Next, escape. I never heard the word escape without a quicker blood, a sudden expectation, a flying attitude. I never hear of prisons broad by soldiers battered down, but I tug childish at my bars, only to fail again. Next, essential oils are wrung. Essential oils are wrung. The attar from the rose is not expressed by suns alone, it is the gift of screws. The general rose decays, but this in lady's drawer makes summer when the lady lies in ceaseless rosemary. Next, eternity. On this wondrous sea, sailing silently, ho, pilot, ho! Knowest thou the shore where no breakers roar, where the storm is o'er? In the silent west, many sails at rest, their anchors fast. Thither I pilot thee, land ho, eternity, ashore at last. Next, evening. The cricket sang and set the sun, and workmen finished one by one their seam the day upon. The low grass loaded with the dew, the twilight stood as strangers do, with hat in hand, polite and new, to stay as if or go. A vastness as a neighbor came, a wisdom without face or name, a peace as hemispheres at home, and so the night became. Next, except the heaven had come so near. Except the heaven had come so near, so seemed to choose my door, the distance would not haunt me so, I had not hoped before. But just to hear the grace depart I never thought to see, afflicts me with a double loss, 'tis lost and lost to me. Next, except to heaven she is not. Except to heaven she is not, except for angels lone, except to some wide wandering bee, a flower superfluous blown, except for winds provincial, except by butterflies, unnoticed as a single dew that on the acre lies. The smallest housewife in the grass, yet take her from the lawn, and somebody has lost the face that made existence home. Next, exclusion. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door, on her divine majority obtrude no more. Unmoved, she notes the chariots pausing at her low gate. Unmoved, an emperor is kneeling upon her mat. I've known her from an ample nation choose one, then close the valves of her attention like stone. Next, experience. I stepped from plank to plank so slow and cautiously. The stars about my head I felt, about my feet the sea. I knew not but the next would be my final inch. This gave me that precarious gait some call experience. Next, experiment to me. Experiment to me is everyone I meet. If it contain a kernel, figure of a nut, presents upon a tree, equally plausibly, but meet within its requisite to squirrels and to me. Next, faith is a fine invention. Faith is a fine invention for gentlemen who see, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency. Next, far from love the Heavenly Father. Far from love the Heavenly Father leads the chosen child, oftener through realm of briar than the meadow mild, oftener by the claw of dragon than the hand of friend, guides the little one predestined to the native land. Next, farewell. Tie the strings into life, my lord, then I am ready to go. Just look at the horses, rapid, that will do. Put me in on the firmest side so I shall never fall, for we must ride to the judgment, and it's partly downhill. But never I mind the bridges, and never I mind the sea, held fast in everlasting race by my own choice and thee. Goodbye to the life I used to live and the world I used to know, and kiss the hills for me just once. Now I am ready to go. Next, Father, I bring thee not myself. Father, I bring thee not myself, that were the little load. I bring thee the imperial heart I had not strength to hold. The heart I cherished in my own till mine too heavy grew, yet strangest heavier since it went. Is it too large for you? Next, few get enough. Few get enough, enough is one to that ethereal throng. Have not each one of us the right to stealthily belong? Next, fire. Ashes denote that fire was, respect the grayest pile, for the departed creature's sake that hovered there a while. Fire exists the first in light and then consolidates. Only the chemist can disclose into what carbonates. Next, following. I had no cause to be awake, my best was gone to sleep, and morn a new politeness took. and failed to wake them up, but called the others clear and passed their curtains by. Sweet morning, when I oversleep, knock, recollect for me. I look at sunrise once, and then I looked at them, and wishfulness in me arose for circumstance the same. 'Twas such an ample peace, it could not hold a sigh. 'Twas Sabbath with the bells divorced, 'twas sunset all the day. So choosing but a gown and taking but a prayer, the only raiment I would need, I struggled and was there. Next, Forbidden Fruit, Part 1. Forbidden fruit a flavor has that lawful orchard mocks. How luscious lies the pea within the pod that duty locks. And then Forbidden Fruit, Part 2. Heaven is what I cannot reach, the apple on the tree, provided it do hopeless hang, that heaven is to me. The color on the cruising cloud, the interdicted ground, behind the hill, the house behind, there paradise is found. Next, Forgotten. There is a word which bears a sword that can pierce an armed man. It hurls its barbed syllables, at once is mute again. But where it fell, the saved will tell on patriotic day. Some epauletted brother gave his breath away. Wherever runs the breathless sun, wherever roams the day, there is its noiseless onset, there is victory. Behold the keenest marksman, the most accomplished shot. Time's sublimest target is a soul forgot. Next, Frequently the woods are pink. Frequently the woods are pink, frequently are brown. Frequently the hills undress behind my native town. Oft a head was crested I was wont to see, as oft a cranny where it used to be. And the earth, they tell me, on its axis turned, wonderful rotation by but 12 performed. Next, friends. Are friends delight or pain? Good bounty but remain. Riches were good. But if they only stay bolder to fly away, riches are sad. Next, fringed gentian. God made a little gentian. It tried to be a rose, and failed, and all the summer laughed. But just before the snows, there came a purple creature that ravished all the hill, and summer hid her forehead, and mockery was still. The frosts were her condition, the Tyrian would not come until the north evoked it. Creator, shall I bloom? Next, from the chrysalis. My cocoon tightens, colors tease. I'm feeling for the air, a dim capacity for wings, degrades the dress I wear. The power of butterfly must be the aptitude to fly. Meadows of majesty concedes an easy sweeps of sky. So I must baffle at the hint and cipher at the sign, and make much blunder if at last I take the clue divine. Next, ghosts. One need not a chamber to be haunted, one not need a house. The brain has corridors surpassing material place. Far safer of a midnight meeting external ghost than an interior confronting that whiter host. Far safer through an abbey gallop the stones a chase, than moonless one's own self-encounter in lonesome place. Ourself behind ourself concealed should startle most. Assassin hid in our apartment be horror's least. The prudent carries a revolver, he bolts the door, overlooking a superior spectre more near. Next, given in marriage unto thee. Given in marriage unto thee, O thou celestial host, bride of the Father and the Son, bride of the Holy Ghost. Other betrothals shall dissolve, wedlock of will decay. Only the keeper of this seal conquers mortality. Next, going to heaven. Going to heaven, I don't know when. Pray do not ask me how. Indeed, I'm too astonished to think of answering you. Going to heaven, how dim it sounds, and yet it will be done, as sure as flocks go home at night unto the shepherd's arm. Perhaps you're going too. Who knows? If you should get there first, save just a little place for me, close to the two I lost. The smallest robe will fit me, and just a bit of crown, for you know we do not mind our dress when we are going home. I'm glad I don't believe it, or it would stop my breath, as I'd like to look a little more on such a curious earth. I'm glad they did believe it whom I have never found, since the mighty autumn afternoon I left them in the ground. Next, going. On such a night or such a night would anybody care if such a little figure slipped quietly from its chair? So quiet, how quiet, that nobody might know, but that the little figure rocked softer to and fro. On such a dawn or such a dawn would anybody sigh that such a little figure too sound asleep did lie. For chanticleer to wake it, or stirring house below, or giddy bird in orchard, or orly task to do, there was a little figure plump for every little knoll, busy needles and spools of thread, and trudging feet from school. Playmates and holidays and nuts and visions vast and small. Strange that the feet so precious charged should reach so small a goal. Next, gone. Went up a year this evening, I recollect it well. Amid no bells nor bravos the bystanders will tell. Cheerful as to the village, tranquil as to repose, chastened as to the chapel, this humble tourist rose. Did not talk of returning, alluded to no time, when, with the gales propitious, we might look for him, was grateful for the roses and life's diverse bouquet, talk softly of new species to pick another day. Beguiling us thus the wondrous nearer drew, hands bustled at the mornings, the crowd respectful grew, ascended from our vision to countenances new, a difference, a daisy, is all the rest I knew. Next, good night, which put the candle out. I'm going to sip some water first. Good night, which put the candle out. A jealous zephyr, not a doubt. Ah, friend, you little knew how long at that celestial wick the angels labored diligent, extinguished now for you. It might have been the lighthouse spark some sailor rowing in the dark had importuned to see. It might have been the waning lamp that lit the drummer from the camp to purer reveal. Next, gossip. The leaves, like women, interchange sagacious confidence, somewhat of nods and somewhat of portentous inference. The parties in both cases enjoining secrecy, inviolable compact to notoriety. Next, griefs. I measure every grief I meet with analytic eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine, or has an easier size. I wonder if they bore it long, or did it just begin. I could not tell the date of mine, it feels so old a pain. I wonder if it hurts to live, and if they have to try, and whether, could they choose between, they would not rather die. I wonder if, when years have piled some thousands on the cause of early hurt, if such a lapse could give them any pause. Or would they go on aching still through centuries above, enlightened to a larger pain by contrast with the love. The grieved are many, I am told, the reason deeper lies. Death is but one, and comes but once, and only nails the eyes. There's grief of want and grief of cold, a sort they call despair. There's banishment from native eyes in sight of native air. And though I may not guess the kind correctly, yet to me, a piercing comfort it affords in passing cavalry. To note the fashions of the cross of those that stand alone, still fascinated to presume that some are like my own. Next, he put the belt around my life. I heard the buckle snap, and turned away, imperial, my lifetime folding up, deliberate as a duke would do a kingdom's title deed, henceforth a dedicated sort, a member of the cloud. Yet not too far to come at call and do the little toils that make the circuits of the rest, and deal occasional smiles to lives that stoop to notice mine and kindly ask it in. Whose invitation knew you not for whom I must decline? Next, he touched me, so I lived to know. That such a day permitted so. I groped upon his breast, it was a boundless place to me, and silenced as the awful sea puts minor streams to rest. And now I'm different from before, as if I breathed superior air or brushed a royal gown. My feet too that had wandered so, my gypsy face transfigured now to tenderer renown. Next, heart not so heavy as mine, wending late home, as it passed by my window whistled itself a tune. A careless snatch, a ballad, a ditty of the street, yet to my irritated ear an anodyne so sweet. It was as if a bobolink, sauntering this way, caroled and mused and caroled, then bubbled slow away. It was as if a chirping brook upon a toilsome way set bleeding feet to minuets without the knowing why. Tomorrow night will come again, weary perhaps and sore. Ah, bugle but my window, I pray you stroll once more. Next, heart, we will forget him. Heart, we will forget him, you and I tonight. You may forget the warmth he gave, I will forget the light. When you have done, pray tell me, that my thoughts may dim. Haste, lest while you're lagging I may remember him. Next, high from the earth I heard a bird. High from the earth I heard a bird, he trod upon the trees, as he esteemed them trifles, and then he spied a breeze, and situated softly upon a pile of wind, which in a perturbation nature had left behind. A joyous going fellow I gathered from his talk, which both of benediction and badinage partook. Without apparent burden I leaned in leafy wood. He was the faithful father of a dependent brood, and this untoward transport his remedy for care, a contrast to our respites. How different we are. Next, hope. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore it must be warm, that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Hope is a subtle glutton, he feeds upon the fair, and yet inspected closely, what abstinence is there? His is the halcyon table that never seats but one, and whatsoever is consumed the same amounts remain. Next, how dare the robins sing? How dare the robins sing when men and women hear, who since they went into their account have settled with the year, paid all that life had earned in one consummate bill, and now what life or death can do is immaterial. Insulting is the sun to him whose mortal light, beguiled of immortality, bequeaths him to the night. Indifference to him extinct be very hum, whose garden wrestles with the dew at daybreak overcome. Next, how still the bells and steeples stand. How still the bells and steeples stand, till swollen with the sky, they leap upon their silver feet in frantic melody. Next, hunger. I had been hungry all the years, my noon had come to dine. I, trembling, drew the table near, and touched the curious wine. 'Twas this on tables I had seen, when turning, hungry, lone, I looked in windows for the wealth I could not hope to own. I did not know the ample bread 'twas so unlike the crumb the birds and I had often shared in nature's dining room. The plenty hurt me, 'twas so new, myself felt ill and odd, as berry of a mountain bush transplanted to the road. Nor was I hungry, so I found that hunger was a way of persons outside windows the entering takes away. Next, I breathed enough to learn the trick. I breathed enough to learn the trick, and now, removed from air, I simulate the breath so well that one, to be quite sure, the lungs are stirless, must ascend among the cunning cells, and touch the pantomime himself, how cool the bellows feels. Next, I bring an unaccustomed wine. I bring an unaccustomed wine to lips long parching next to mine, and summon them to drink. Crackling with fever, they essay. I turn my brimming eyes away, and come next hour to look. The hands still hug the tardy glass, the lips I would have cooled, alas, are so superfluous cold, I would as soon attempt to warm the bosoms where the frost has lain ages beneath the mold. Some other thirsties there may be, to whom this would have pointed me had it remained to speak. And so I always bear the cup, if haply mine may be the drop some pilgrim thirsts to slake. If haply any say to me, unto the little, unto me, when I at last awake. Next, I died for beauty but was scarce. I died for beauty but was scarce, adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. The two are one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms, until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. Next, I felt a funeral in my brain. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll, as all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I and silence some strange race, wrecked solitary there. Next, I found the phrase to every thought. I found the phrase to every thought I ever had but one, and that defies me, as a hand did try to chalk the sun. To races nurtured in the dark, how would your own begin? Can blaze be done in cochineal, or noon in Mazarin? Next, I gained it so. I gained it so, by climbing slow, by catching at the twigs that grow. Between the bliss and me it hung so high, as well the sky attempt by strategy. I said I gained it, this was all. Look how I clutch it, lest it fall. And I a pauper go, unfitted by an instant's grace, with a contented beggar's face I wore an hour ago. Next, I had a guinea golden. I had a guinea golden, I lost it in the sand, and though the sum was simple, and pounds were in the land, still had it such a value unto my frugal eye, that when I could not find it, I sat me down to sigh. I had a crimson robin who sang full many a day, but when the woods were painted, he too did fly away. Time brought me other robins, their ballads were the same, still for my missing troubadour I kept the house at hame. I had a star in heaven, one Pleiad was its name, and when I was not heeding, it wandered from the same. And though the skies are crowded and all the night a shine, I do not care about it, since none of them are mine. My story has a moral. I have a missing friend, Pleiad its name, and Robin, and Guinea in the sand. And when this mournful ditty, accompanied with tear, shall meet the eye of trader in country so far from here, grant that repentance solemn may seize upon his mind, and he no consolation beneath the sun may find. Next, I have a king who does not speak. I have a king who does not speak, so wandering through the hours meek, I trudge the day away, half glad when it is night and sleep, if haply through a dream to peep in parlours shut by day. And if I do when morning comes, it is as if 100 drums did round my pillow roll, and shouts fill all my childish sky, and bells keep saying victory from steeples in my soul. And if I don't, the little bird within the orchard is not heard, and I omit to pray, Father, thy will be done today, for my will goes the other way, and it were perjury. Next, I have not told my garden yet. I have not told my garden yet, lest that should conquer me. I have not quite the strength now to break it to the bee. I will not name it in the street, for shops would stare that I, so shy, so very ignorant, should have the face to die. The hillsides must not know it, where I have rambled so, nor tell the loving forests the day that I shall go, nor lisp it at the table, nor heedless by the way, hint that within the riddle one will walk today. Next, I know that he exists. I know that he exists, somewhere in silence. He has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. 'Tis an instant's play, 'tis a fond ambush, just to make bliss earn her own surprise. But should the play prove piercing earnest, should the glee gaze in death's stiff stare, would not the fun look too expensive? Would not the jest have crawled too far? Next, I lived on dread to those who know. I lived on dread to those who know the stimulus there is. In danger, other impetus is numb and vitalless. as 'twere a spur upon the soul, a fear will urge it where to go without the spectre's aid or challenging despair. Next, I many times thought peace had come. I many times thought peace had come when peace was far away, as wrecked men deem they sight the land at center of the sea, and struggle slacker but to prove as hopelessly as I how many the fictitious shores before the harbor lie. Next, I meant to find her when I came. I meant to find her when I came. Death had the same design, but the success was his, it seems, and the discomfit mine. I meant to tell her how I longed for just this single time, but death had told her so the first, and she had hearkened him. To wander now is my abode, to rest the rest would be, the privilege of hurricane to memory and me. Next, I never lost as much but twice. I never lost as much but twice, and that was in the sod. Twice I have stood a beggar before the door of God. Angels twice descending reimbursed my store. Burglar, banker, father, I am poor once more. Next, I never saw a moor. I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea. Yet know I how the heather looks and what a wave must be. I never spoke with God nor visited in heaven, yet certain am I of the spot as if the chart were given. Next, I noticed people disappeared. I noticed people disappeared when but a little child, supposed they visited remote, or settled regions wild. Now know I they both visited and settled regions wild, but did because they died, a fact withheld the little child. Next, I read my sentence steadily. I read my sentence steadily, reviewed it with my eyes, to see that I had made no mistake in its extremest clause. The date and manner of the shame, and on the pious form, that God have mercy on the soul, the jury voted him. I made my soul familiar with her extremity, that at the last it should not be a novel agony, but she and death, acquainted, meet tranquilly as friends, salute and pass without a hint, and there the matter ends. Next, I reason earth is short. I reason earth is short, and anguish absolute, and many hurt, but what of that? I reason we could die, the best vitality cannot excel decay, but what of that? I reason that in heaven somehow it will be even, some new equation given, but what of that? Next, I shall know why when time is over. I shall know why when time is over, and I have ceased to wonder why. Christ will explain each separate anguish in the fair schoolroom of the sky. He will tell me what Peter promised, and I, for wonder at his woe, I shall forget the drop of anguish that scalds me now, that scalds me now. Next, I think just how my shape will rise. I think just how my shape will rise when I shall be forgiven, till hair and eyes and timid head are out of sight in heaven. I think just how my lips will weigh with shapeless, quivering prayer, that you so late consider me the sparrow of your care. I mind me that of anguish sent, some drifts were moved away, before my simple bosom broke, and why not this, if they? And so, until delirious born, I con that thing forgiven, till with long fright and longer trust I dropped my heart unshriven. Next, I went to heaven. I went to heaven. 'Twas a small town, lit with a ruby, lathed with down, stiller than the fields at the full dew, beautiful as pictures no man drew. People like the moth of Mechlin frames, duties of gossamer and Eldon names. Almost contented I could be 'mong such unique society. Next, I went to thank her. I went to thank her, but she slept, her bed a funneled stone, with nosegays at the head and foot that travellers had thrown. Who went to thank her, but she slept. 'Twas short to cross the sea, to look upon her like alive, but turning back 'twas slow. Next, I wish I knew that woman's name. I wish I knew that woman's name, so when she comes this way to hold my life and hold my ears, for fear I hear her say, she's sorry I am dead again, just when the grave and I had sobbed ourselves almost to sleep, our only lullaby. Next, I wonder if the sepulchre is not a lonesome way, when men and boys and larks in June go down the fields to hay. Next, I worked for chaff and earning wheat. I worked for chaff, and earning wheat was haughty and betrayed. What right had fields to arbitrate in matters ratified? I tasted wheat and hated chaff, and thanked the ample friend. Wisdom is more becoming viewed at distance than at hand. Next, I'm nobody. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us, don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody, how public like a frog, to tell your name the livelong day to an admiring bog. Next, I've got an arrow here. I've got an arrow here, loving the hand that sent it, I the dart revere. Fell, they will say, in skirmish, vanquished my soul will know, but by a simple arrow, sped by an archer's bow. Next, I've seen a dying eye. I've seen a dying eye run round and round a room, in search of something as it seemed, then cloudier become, and then obscurer with fog, and then be soldered down, without disclosing what it be, 'twere blessed to have seen. Next, if anybody's friend be dead. If anybody's friend be dead, it's sharpest of the theme, the thinking how they walked alive at such and such a time, their costume of a Sunday, some manner of the hair, a prank nobody knew but them, lost in the sepulchre. How warm they were on such a day, you almost feel the date, so short way off it seems, and now they're centuries from that. How pleased they were at what you said. You tried to touch the smile, and dip your fingers across the frost. When was it, can you tell? You asked the company to see, acquaintance just a few, and chatted close with this grand thing that don't remember you. Past bows and invitations, past interview and vow, past what ourselves can estimate, that makes the quick of woe. Next, if I may have it when it's dead. If I may have it when it's dead, I will contented be. If just as soon as breath is out, it shall belong to me. Until they lock it in the grave, 'tis bliss I cannot weigh, for though they lock thee in the grave, myself can hold the key. Think of it, lover, I and thee, permitted face to face to be, After a life a death will say, for death was that, and this was is thee. Next, if I shouldn't be alive. If I shouldn't be alive when the robins come, give the one in red cravat a memorial crumb. If I couldn't thank you, being just asleep, you will know I'm trying with my granite lip. Next, if the foolish call them flowers. If the foolish call them flowers, need the wiser tell? If the savants classify them, it is just as well. Those who read the revelations must not criticize those who read the same edition with beclouded eyes. Could we stand with that old Moses canon denied, scan like him the stately landscape on the other side? Doubtless we should deem superfluous many sciences not pursued by learned angels in scholastic skies. Lo, amid that glad bell's letters, grant that we may stand, stars amid profound galaxies at that grand right hand. Next, immortal is an ample word. Immortal is an ample word when what we need is by, but when it leaves us for a time, 'tis a necessity. Of heaven above the firmest proof we fundamental know, except for its marauding hand, it had been heaven below. Next, immortality. It is an honorable thought, and makes one lift one's hat, as in one encountered gentlefolk upon a daily street, that we've immortal place, though pyramids decay, and kingdoms like the orchard flit russetly away. Next, in a library. A precious, mouldering pleasure 'tis to meet an antique book, in just the dress his century wore, a privilege, I think. His venerable hand to take, and warming in our own, a passage back or two to make, to times when he was young. His quaint opinions to inspect, his knowledge to unfold, on what concerns our mutual mind, the literature of old. What interested scholars most, what competitions ran when Plato was a certainty and Sophocles a man. When Sappho was a living girl and Beatrice wore the gown that Dante deified, facts centuries before. He traverses familiar as one should come to town and tell you all your dreams were true. He lived where dreams were sown. His presence is enchantment, you beg him not to go. Old volumes shake their vellum heads and tantalize just so. Next, in lands I never saw, they say. In lands I never saw, they say, immortal Alps look down, whose bonnets touch the firmament, whose sandals touch the town. Meek at whose everlasting feet a myriad daisies play. Which, sir, are you, and which am I, upon an August day? Next, in shadow. I dreaded that first robin so, but he is mastered now, and I'm accustomed to him grown. He hurts a little, though. I thought if I could only live till that first shout got by, not all the pianos in the woods had power to mangle me. I dared not meet the daffodils, for fear their yellow gown would pierce me with a fashion so foreign to my own. I wished the grass would hurry, so when 'twas time to see, he'd be too tall the tallest one could stretch to look at me. I could not bear the bees should come, I wished they'd stay away. In those dim countries where they go, what word had they for me? They're here, though, not a creature failed, no blossom stayed away, in gentle deference to me, the queen of cavalry. Each one salutes me as he goes, and I my childish plumes lift in bereaved acknowledgment of their unthinking drums. All right, I have been reading for about 2 hours straight now, and I've gone through 200 poems now. 200 Emily Dickinson poems for 2 hours. It is needless to say that although I started this stream as a means to help people sleep, I think I myself need to sleep now. So I am going to head on out. But I really hope that this was an enjoyable experience. A refreshing new experience. It was certainly new and refreshing for me. So yeah, good night everybody, and I'll see you whenever I stream again. At this point, I really have no idea when I will or not. It's just very much guerrilla streaming at this point. But yeah, I'll see you later.